Hey, I hope you're well, that you had happy holidays, and that you're off to a terrific new year. I want to start by saying I did not think I was going to be talking about this movie. When I sat down in the theater, I thought, I'm not going to review this movie. But that was before I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'm Hope Acosta. Welcome back to Even Odder Podcast. In Mufasa the Lion King, Simba and Nala prepare for their second cub, while their younger cub, Kiara, waits back home under the dutiful care of Rafiki, Timon, and Pumbaa. Kiara, scared of the change ahead, is comforted when Rafiki shares the treacherous story her grandfather Mufasa had to go through to become the Lion King. The story jumps to years before, where Mufasa, after being separated from his family, is adopted into a pride by Queen Eshe and King Obasi, when he is saved by their young son, Prince Taka. Mufasa and Taka quickly bond, considering themselves brothers. However, their lives are upended when Mufasa kills one of the outsider lions in defense of Eshe. The outsiders, determined on revenge, kill Queen Eshe and King Obasi, forcing Taka and Mufasa to flee. By happenstance, the two are joined by a young Sarabi, Zazu, and Rafiki on their journey to the mythical Malele. When a love triangle forms between Sarabi, Mufasa, and Taka, Taka's jealousy drives him to ally with the outsiders, still bent on enacting their revenge. Reaching Malele, Mufasa works to rally the animals together to help defend their home from the outsiders. During the fight, Taka realizes the damage he has done and turns against the outsiders to save Mufasa. Despite his brother's betrayal, Mufasa forgives Taka, but refuses to call him by his name. Taka, now scarred in more ways than one, renames himself Scar. Mufasa and Sarabi ascend as king and queen, cementing a new era of hope for their pride. Back in the present, Kiara reflects on her family's legacy and where she fits into it. When she reunites with Simba and Nala and meets her new sibling, she is quickly inspired to share the story of the great king, Mufasa. There are a surprising amount of actors involved in Mufasa the Lion King. I had to break this down into 3 different categories to organize which actors were involved and what part of the story they were in. First, you have the returning actors from the 2019 Lion King adaptation, mainly Simba, Nala, Rafiki, Timon, and Pumbaa, also now accompanied by Kiara. Then you have the phase of the story where Mufasa and Taka are young cubs and everyone that is involved with them at that point. And finally, you have what I would consider the leads of this film. If you enjoyed the 2019 Lion King adaptation, you'll be happy to know that both Donald Glover and Beyoncé are reprising their roles as Simba and Nala, as well as entirely way too much of Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner as Timon and Pumbaa. And they finally listened to how much Rafiki we not only wanted, but needed, with both John Connie's and Kaji Soledka's performance. Unfortunately, there's a lot of fluff in every scene this group is included in. This is where Blue Ivy as Kiara stands out for me, because despite all the absurdity that Timon and Pumbaa bring to these scenes, Kiara always works to make the scene feel more grounded, and like she really is this nervous little lion cub, worried about where her parents are. Her character also always brings us back to the story we actually came for, which brings me to Braylon Rankins as young Mufasa. Before we get too into Braylon, I want to clarify that there are 2 different periods of the past that are included in Mufasa's story. The first is when Mufasa and Taka are young cubs. The second is when they're a little bit older, growing into their manes. Think Simba, post-Hakuna Matata transition. The period of the film where Mufasa and Taka are young cubs is brilliantly cast. Keith David plays Masego, Mufasa's dad. Need I say more? And Anika Noni Rose, who I know as Tiana from Princess and the Frog, plays his mother Afia, who delivers an incredible vocal performance on the song Malele. Braylon Rankins delivers an incredible voice performance as young Mufasa. His singing parts in I've Always Wanted a Brother are astounding, especially for his solo in the bridge of the song. I think it's easy to overlook Braylon Rankins in the song because of how incredible Theo Samulu's performance as young Taka is. Unlike Timon and Pumbaa, I know Taka is going to grow up to become Scar. Did that stop me from getting attached? Not one bit. Nope. I was attached the second that kid opened its mouth. The lion open its mouth? The kid. The lion. Something. The youthful quality of his voice is perfect for his singing parts. He's got me walking around my house singing I always wanted a brother several times a day. Lenny James didn't do much as Obasi to stand out for me, but I really appreciate Tandy Newton's performance as Eshe. To be fair, Eshe is a bit more involved than Obasi is, but there's this nice nurturing quality to Eshe's voice that seems really easy for Tandy to disappear into. Before I move on to the main cast, I have to recognize Mads Mikkelsen as Kyros. I was pretty frightened when I first saw him on screen, and I definitely bought that he was the big bad of this film. He's also got like this lioness accomplice that I cannot remember the name of, but she was extremely menacing. There was this fun, raspy quality to all of the outsider lions' voices that really felt like old school Disney villains. I mentioned that Kagiso Ledka plays younger Rafiki earlier, and if it's a testament to how well he does in the role, I didn't know that there were 2 Rafikis cast until I looked up the cast list. Preston Nyman plays Zazu, and I think it's the only recast from the 2019 Lion King adaptation. In that one, John Oliver plays Zazu. And while neither of them have anything on Mr. Bean, aka Rowan Atkinson's performance as Zazu in the original Lion King, I do prefer John Oliver's more. Preston Nyman does well, and maybe they were just going for a younger sound, but I don't think it was needed. Though I want to talk about how gorgeous Tiffany Boone is, it's her voice performance that deserves recognition here. She has incredible conviction in everything she says, and honors the legacy of the queen we know extremely well. Kelvin Harrison Jr. blows me away as Taka. I've seen him in some interviews since seeing Mufasa, and it's really impressive how he's able to adjust his voice to sit where Scar's does without it feeling strained. I said Scar, but I really mean Taka, but I also really mean Scar. Because after the point where Scar renames himself, Kelvin Harrison Jr. is able to shift into what sounds almost exactly like Jeremy Irons' performance as Scar in the original. There's really not many other characters besides Rafiki that are able to accomplish that original quality for me. So, hats off to Kelvin. And finally, we have to talk about Aaron Pierre as Mufasa. There's a certain believability about the trajectory of Braylon Rankins becoming the wise Mufasa we know and love. But what I love about Aaron Pierre's performance as Mufasa is that there's this kind of unsure quality that exemplifies where Mufasa's at this point in time. Aaron Pierre is able to showcase vulnerability in his voice in a number of scenes in different ways. From pleading with Obasi to listen to him, to his breathless I got yous when he's saving Sarabi. It's these intimate moments within Pierre's voice performance that were able to separate Mufasa from the king we know to the leader we see him becoming. Similarly to Kelvin, there's a certain quality that Aaron Pierre achieves in Mufasa's voice by the end of the movie. But I'll let you check that out for yourself. For now, on to the visuals. Mufasa is a visually stunning film. It's so stunning that half the world is convinced it's live action when it is not live action. Something similar was accomplished in their first hyper-realistic Lion King feature, just in slightly different ways. The 2019 Lion King adaptation wanted to achieve a certain level of realism by limiting the expressions that were put on the lions' faces. But critics recognize that they had limitations through this approach because they don't really do anything to anthropomorphize the lions, and you're just kind of left with this visual of a lion opening and closing its mouth. With these hyper-realistic adaptations, I expect that the lions' faces aren't going to move exactly like the original animated version. But you can immediately tell the difference in Mufasa with just some of the opening shots of Kiara. The animation of her face is able to capture her fascination, fear, and wonder all within a quick moment. Another visual element I really enjoyed about Mufasa is the different terrain explored. I know it's all CGI, but I really appreciate how they were able to separate the environment so distinctively. On to the actual story. While I enjoyed this movie, there is no reason that it should be nearly 2 hours. I was genuinely surprised by all of the setup needed to get to Mufasa's story, because when I sat down in the theater, I was fully prepared for a story about Mufasa, Scar, and maybe Sarabi. I didn't need some life update on Simba. I've seen the Lion King sequels. That said, Kiara was adorable, and I did enjoy seeing Timon and Pumbaa. The first time. Every time after that, I was like, please stop. I think about 20 minutes of the half hour not needed in this movie is legitimately just Timon and Pumbaa. Because once you actually get to Mufasa, it's pretty intense. For instance, the moment Mufasa loses his parents is definitely comparable to the tension-filled moments of Mufasa's death in The Lion King. And considering how convinced I was that I knew what Mufasa's story was going to be, I seriously admire that the plot kept finding ways to subvert my expectations. But I've got to get to my favorite part, which is Cub Taka, because he's frickin' adorable. And while I'm kind of against every villain needing to have an origin story, young Taka made me incredibly interested in Scar's. If only they wouldn't have flubbed it so hard. I get that this is Mufasa's story, not Scar's, but what is one without the other? When their falling out after being raised as cubs together came down to being over a girl, I was incredibly disappointed. There are some other moments you could say lead to the climax, but I think what's forgotten is that Scar is still kind of a kid during this movie. No older than Simba in the events of The Lion King. And the harsh judgments the movie wants you to make about Taka, and for him to be seen as though he's on the wrong path, feels just so new Disney, and in my opinion, lacks any actual message. If the fact that I haven't brought up the antagonist, Kyros, until now, doesn't alarm you, it should. Kyros as an antagonist and as leader of the Outsiders, aka the White Lions, is genuinely scary. The first time I saw the White Lions, I was legitimately concerned. The problem is, it's Mufasa. I know where his story is going. I know that he's going to be okay. So, as intimidating as I found the Outsiders at points, I couldn't actually ever see them as a threat. There is another threat present in the movie related to sustainability and other level of harm the Outsiders are causing, but it's never at the forefront of the movie enough to be executed well. It is a nice element that definitely adds to the devastation of Scar decimating the Pride Lands in the original Lion King, but other than that, it's just filler. I have mixed feelings about the ending. I think Taka receiving his scar is pretty lackluster, and maybe I'm just feeling personally bitter, but I hate that Mufasa doesn't forgive Taka. Fan service did get me a bit though, because how epic was the formation of Pride Rock? Going into this, I wasn't exactly sure what Mufasa was going to deliver on, but after Moana 2, the one thing I expected was good music. Unfortunately, the music when I first saw this was incredibly lacking. When I left the theater, I had really only enjoyed one song. I have listened to the soundtrack several times since then, and I really do like it, but I think part of the issue is that it's not very good Lion King music. The song I enjoyed the most during my watch was I Always Wanted a Brother. Partially because of Braylon and Theo, but also because it was the song that most reminded me of The Lion King. All the other songs, while fun, decent, and extremely Lin-Manuel Miranda, don't really do a lot to move the story forward, besides with Brother Betrayed. Which is also the last song sung in Mufasa, and that feels super wrong. I've also seen a lot of feedback saying that Bye Bye is the worst Disney villain song ever. I disagree. It's definitely not perfect, and I physically cringed when I first saw it in the movie. But it's a fun song, performed well by Mads Mikkelsen, and each time I hear it, I just want to get up and dance.
Get up here! Look. Let's dance!
The music in Mufasa isn't perfect, but it's better than anything in Moana 2. Like me, you probably wondered if there was any other reason besides money that this movie was being made. The 2019 Lion King is number 10 on the list of highest-grossing films of all time, raking in over $1 billion. So, I'm gonna say no. But there's no denying the appeal of family-friendly films, with major contenders at the Christmas Day box office being Mufasa and Sonic 3. Heavily anticipated Christmas debuts like Nosferatu and A Complete Unknown opened to their own box office success. But it's interesting to see how two movies that opened the week before Christmas have continued to succeed over the holiday season. Mufasa has currently earned over $335 million and is set to become one of the top 20 highest-grossing films of 2024. While it may not sound like it, I really enjoyed Mufasa. Disney seemed to accomplish a lot of their goals for this movie, including connecting us deeper to characters we know and love, while providing some fun familial backstory and creating another round of catchy Disney songs. But Disney also shamelessly cashes in on one of its most beloved IPs and likely paid Beyoncé way too much money for her 30-second contribution. Mufasa gets like a high 6 or a low 7. It's probably going to be a low 7 for me because if you haven't been able to tell, I still have major frustration with Moana 2, and this movie is way more enjoyable than that. But is it even fair for me to compare prequels to sequels? Let me know. And if you've seen Mufasa, share your thoughts with me in the comments below. As for what's next on Even Otter, I'm still deciding, mainly on order of how I want to present this next month of movies. So stay tuned for that. But until next time, thanks for being here today. I hope you are even odder than you were before listening to this, and...
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.